China's two sessions began last Thursday, a key annual event on Beijing's political calendar, which gathers the National People's Congress and its top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. The occasion was made all the more significant this year as the legislature unveiled its new 5-year economic development plan, the 14th of its kind, as the world's second largest economy aims to become the first by 2035. The Chinese government announced that it aims to grow the economy by more than 6% this year, with a slew of initiatives to bolster people's livelihoods and fuel new engines of growth. But is this all possible amid various domestic and external challenges? We discussed this today with Dr. Henry Huyao Wang, founder and president of the Center for China and Globalization, one of the world's leading think tanks in Beijing. We also connect with Dr. David Dollar, Senior Fellow in the John L. Thornton China Center at Brookings Institution, who authored China 2049 Economic Challenges of a Rising Global Power. Very warm welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we're going to start with you, Dr. Wang. Now, the Chinese government released its growth target for this year, which was above 6%. Which was significantly lower than what most global forecasters have predicted, around an 8% target. Why do you think this is? And do you think this indicates that the government is intending to make perhaps greater public investment?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And what I think actually the ongoing two sections, particularly the National People's Congress, which Premier Lee has made a working report. He outlined the progress of the New Year's plan and also the 5 years plan. But one of the things that you're right, he proposed a target of a 6% growth, which they hasn't been specified last year due to the pandemic. What I think that the reason that it still calls for 6% is that it is still, the world is still in pandemic situation. And I think the government wants to be a little conservative a little bit, but I think China will achieve its target by 6%, whereas World Bank has projected that to be 7.9% when we have the event with World Bank. So I think that the reason for that to have a 6% is to be a bit modesty, but also to really send a strong signal to the world that China is back and then trying to be really leading the world economy first out of recession, out of this pandemic, but also give a little caution, that we don't have any more changes of the virus or the pandemic, so that we don't have to say that high. So I think I'm sure they're going to reach 6 to 8%. That given the current situation, everything seems under control in China. And I think government is really mobilize all the the delegates, but also through that to the population in China, that China is going to hit a new target by this year.
And of course, the Chinese economy was the only one in the world last year to actually see growth. And Dr. Dollar, now with its 14th 5-year plan underway, China looks to double its gross domestic product and per capita income by 2035, which would surpass the US as the world's largest economy. But to get there, China does need to overcome some issues with unemployment, regional disparities, and an aging population. And the country seems to have long relied on public investment in innovation and infrastructure as a source of growth. Is this a sustainable strategy, though?
So as you say, the aspiration is to double GDP by 2035. That's quite realistic. It's actually a somewhat modest target. China would have to grow at about 4.7% per year to reach that target over 15 years. So I think that's fairly modest, but as you say, they face a lot of daunting challenges of aging population and rural-urban divide, and they have been issuing a lot of credit, mostly to public sector entities, a lot of lending to local governments for infrastructure, and lending to state enterprises to enhance their innovation and build them up as global champions. And I do think they need to change that strategy to some extent. We've seen a big run-up in leverage in the whole economy, debt relative to GDP. And that's a sign that some of this investment is not really being that efficient. it's not generating growth. So I'm hoping that we see more of a shift away from some of this public investment to supporting the private sector's innovation in different ways. A lot of material in the 5-year plan outlined about how to bolster innovation, and some of that definitely involves supporting the private sector. So I think with some adjustment, they can meet that growth target that they've set for 2035.
And Dr. Wang, in order to achieve these socio-economic goals by 2035, it does seem that innovation in the energy and high-tech sectors will be crucial. But with the regional disparities and the aging population, what will the country have to prioritize in order to move forward?
Yes, I think that now they are just about 2 weeks ago, China announced that they have alleviated the extreme poverty, and they have done that already. But now they have to really get to the new target now. So basically, what they have proposed in the working report is actually, for example, they're going to build a new rural regulation, new townships. So actually, to build China's probably 4th, 5th, 6th tier cities, townships, villages. So they're going to revitalize the countryside. That's one of the targets. Even though they have got 800 million people out of poverty in the last 4 decades, but now they want to really change the rural area. The other thing I think they have to do a lot of on the social sectors. The more education, more Medicare, and more digital economy, for example, is also another new drive. China now already has 38% of its GDP digital in its economy, GDP now. So also they're going to rely heavily on also the international cooperation. So I think all those combined, but technology certainly is the key, because China now doesn't want to leave an impression that every country is upgraded. China has upgraded already. The society of their GDP has gone up. They have reached $10,000 US per capita. So they have to really, at the same time, upgrade their technology as well. It's not necessarily they're going to totally for independence, but I think really because China needs that. China is a country with 200 categories of products that is leading in the UN product categories. So they have to really have this sophisticated technology to sustain that, to support that. But also climate change and environment protection, all those things. I think China is really shifting from its high speed to high growth now, and that really is the key that for this working report to emphasize, and then for the government to pay more attention to that, so that they can really achieve the target of 6%. But also, as David mentioned, that they're going to achieve target probably by 2035, that they're going to double its GDP, which means from now on, every year you have to have a 4.7, 4.8 growth for the next 15 years. So I think that's probably a very ambitious plan, but they have to do it from all rounded, including technology.
And of course, there have been a lot of questions around the US-China rivalry that we've been seeing for the past couple of years. And Dr. Dolle, in late February, President Joe Biden ordered a 100-day review of American supply chains that rely on China for products such as semiconductor chips, pharmaceuticals, car batteries, and rare earth elements. And well, Chinese investment in US technology companies, they're also expected to be restricted to a certain extent as well. And now there have been suggestions that the Biden administration might pursue narrowly tailored actions on these very high-tech sectors. What do you think about this approach, and what do you think President Biden's strategy would or should look like?
Under President Trump, the United States introduced a lot of technology measures against China, cutting off various exports, limiting investment, preventing Americans from investing in China. The Biden administration is reviewing all of that. There's a lot of talk in Washington about essentially taking a finer approach. Secretary Henry Paulson, former Treasury Secretary, has called for a small yard with high fence, meaning define pretty narrowly the technology areas where there are real security concerns, and have the high fence, that is investment and trade restrictions, but otherwise leave the economy open so that you continue to get a lot of trade and investment with China. So what I don't think we know for sure yet where the Biden team will come down, but frankly, it'll be more rational to pursue that kind of policy because there are real costs to the U.S. economy of separating itself from China. And if you just do it in a few areas that have security implications, that's a pretty minor problem for the economy. The rest of the economy can benefit from integration between the US and China, particularly technological advance is a lot more valuable if we've integrated the two economies. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the review will lead to some fine-tuning of US policy and not a general technology decoupling between these two biggest economies.
And Dr. Wang, many have been curious about the reaction from China. How do you think Beijing is preparing against America's the rumored narrowly tailored actions on high tech? How do you think the Chinese government's going to respond as well to the demands regarding intellectual property rights and human rights? Is the Chinese government ready to decouple?
Well, I don't think that Chinese government is going to decouple or willing to decouple. But basically, what actually I have been encouraged a bit by President Biden comes up now. He actually, I'm very impressed that on the eve of Chinese New Year, he and President Xi had a 2 hours long telephone call. And also he said Happy New Year to the Chinese on that call. So it's quite very, very gracious for him. And also, I think that up to now, we haven't really seen any major day-to-day sanctions like we were in the Trump-Pompeo era that we've been experiencing constantly. And furthermore, I think he hasn't really, he defined China as a serious competitor, but wasn't really using the word rivalry. I think that was, competitor is better than rivalry. So I think he has done quite a few. And also he has a very good a very established team advisors advising him now. So I think, most of all, he is really coming back to the multilateral, his favorite multilateralism, which China does that too. So we have some differences, of course, but we have a lot of common interests like climate change. He's going to have an Earth Summit, and probably President Xi will attend that. He's also have on the WHO, he's really support. President Xi pledged the $2 billion to support COVID fighting last year for developing countries. I'm glad to see that President Biden pledged $2 billion again, also at the G7 summit. So there seems to be a lot of common interest now, and of course, as far as China and the U.S. is concerned, there's a structural differences, there's a system differences, there's ideologically maybe different quite a bit as well. But probably we need to really look down at the end is what does better for China and world. So if China can contribute over 1/3 of a world GDP growth, if China can really become the largest trading nation for 130 countries, maybe we need to take a different look at China on development as well. You talk about human rights, but probably you see China is lifting 800 million people out of poverty for the last 4 decades. That's probably the biggest human rights development in the history of mankind. So I think we have to look at things a little different lens, but let's measure on the bottom line. So Deng Xiaoping said, doesn't matter if white cat, black cat, as long as it catches mice. So probably we have to tolerate a little different development in China. I hope that China and the U.S. will find many ways in common. So we fight our common enemy, COVID-19, climate change, other global recession. That is really a challenge facing all of us. And I think U.S. and China can work together to achieve that.
And Dr. Dollar, so while many see this as a zero-sum game at the moment, but you've said that we shouldn't be too quick to assume that China and the United States are necessarily going to be enemies in this. So do you see a way forward from this? Do you see any rooms for compromise or cooperation?
I see a lot of opportunities for cooperation. Both the U.S. and the European Union governments have been very clear that they see China as a cooperation partner on a range of global goods. Henry just mentioned some of those. The most important to me is climate change. We can't possibly prevent the temperature rise unless we get stronger commitments from the major economies. So you really need the European Union, the United States, China in particular, and then other countries are important as well. But these three biggest economies, they're really critical for climate change. The new 5-year plan has, I would call, modestly ambitious targets for reducing the carbon output per unit of GDP, but carbon is still going to be going up in China. So there's definitely room for the US and China and others to be negotiating and pushing each other to set stronger targets. President Xi has indicated a target of zero net carbon by 2060. And it's an announcement that's a good first step. But I think we're probably all going to have more ambitious targets, and that's best done in a collective arrangement. And without going on too long, I would add, I think another key issue for cooperation concerns the debt situation in a lot of developing countries. A lot of countries have taken on debt, and now with the COVID recession, they're going to have debt problems. China is the largest official creditor. The United States is the largest shareholder in the International Monetary Fund. It would be natural for us to work together on debt resolution for a number of developing countries that need help. So I just think there's a whole range of global public goods where the two biggest economies really have to work together. And it makes sense because they have common interests concerning those global goods.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, so this is where we're going to have to leave the discussion today. But that was Dr. Henry Huya Wang, President of Center for China and Globalization in Beijing, and Dr. David Dollar, Senior Fellow at Brookings Institution based in Washington, D.C. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great pleasure to join you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching, and thank you for starting your week with us.